Hello everybody, how's it going today? Glowplasma 21 here, back in today to talk about Navigatoria, chapter number 21. This chapter is titled End of the Exploration. And quickly before we hop into this one today, I quickly want to say, hey, I am sorry for how long it's taken me to get this new Navigatoria video out. As I've explained in some other videos on the channel, which I'm sure if you are watching this Navigatoria video, it's not because you just randomly found it on my channel for some reason. It is probably more accurately because you have seen some of my other content, because Navigatoria is not a series with really a whole lot of fans, at least as the manga plus numbers lead us to believe, which, as long as the manga plus numbers are accurate, yeah, it sort of is what it is. But it has been about 2 months since I recorded and put out the last Navigatoria video, mostly because I've talked about Hurricane Helene that really affected my area of the world in the southeastern United States. Really delayed me on making a lot of videos to the point where, like, I'm not caught up on Shonen Jump right now. I'm still trying. I've got a backlog of a mass amount of videos that I'm trying to make. But through all of that, today we were talking about, of course, the Navigatoria manga, of course, written and illustrated by Waka Oishishi, Waka Oshishi, which, I'm sorry, sometimes, like, the way that Japanese syllables are said, just whenever you combine two of them that are the exact same in a row, it just messes with my mind, and that is something I've got to be better at as somebody who did take a semester and a half of Japanese in high school, so I would think I'd be a bit better at that, but whatever, I digress. Like I said, today we're talking about Navigatoria, chapter number 21, and this is a very interesting chapter of Navigatoria for the main reason of it. How do I really put this? It really solves most of the problems that were brought upon by the whole cave exploration and then the subsequent cave collapsing that we saw a few chapters ago, and this wraps up most of those plot points, except for one in a decently nice sized bow. I definitely think there are a few ass pulls in this chapter, like, oh, look at this. Okay, Andres is alive, and also, who is the mysterious thing that was threatening Riko-tan, Madeleine, and Manabu last chapter? Like, who really knows? But I still do think this is a fine chapter at the end of the day. But of course, if we're going to talk about this chapter number 21 of Navigatoria, let's first talk about what happened last time in Navigatoria. And as I just alluded to, last chapter was the whole chapter really wrapping up the whole conflict between both Aiden and Riko-tan, as pretty much Aiden had fallen into the hole. He got his arm, or a part of his arm, eaten off by that space monster, and pretty much Manabu came to try to rescue him. Riko-tan also helped out, and eventually at the end of last chapter, the entire team made it out of the cave, and they were pretty much found an old decrepit school building, and inside this school building we saw that Madeleine, Riko-tan, and Manabu had all gone in to sort of explore it before the rest of the class came in, sort of as like the first defense. And there was this weird, like, this honestly unsettling creature of some type that appeared behind him, and pretty much just, I forget if it said something. Let me open up the chapter real quick. I did just read it, but I do not have it open in front of me to sort of go through, but yeah, let's just pick it up. Chapter number 20, scroll all the way to the end. Yeah, this thing just says, like, who are you? And all of our main team of three here just like, what in the world was that, right? As they turn around, and that is where we left last chapter off, right? So we start off this chapter in exactly that same position as this thing from behind him, this shadowy figure of almost claws is what it looks like, goes and tries to reach towards the team of three, mainly reaching for Madeleine, as Madeleine is the one who is standing in the middle. We see that as they turn around, we see that both Riko-tan and Manabu sort of stick their arms out. Manabu sort of grabs Madeleine and pulls her a bit closer to him, as Riko-tan sort of like sticks out his elbow, like blocking this creature's defense. As the three of them all start to run, we see that Manabu has grabbed Madeleine's hand and is almost dragging her out as this happens. As all of a sudden, this same voice just says, hey, wait, hey, you guys are students from the Mental Academy, right? You guys were trapped, weren't you, right? Like, hey guys, I'm from the Earth Army, just look at my uniform here, right? And we see who this guy is. He's a guy with some sort of spiky hair in a way. He looks like he's got some, normally I've been closing my window while recording these videos, but I forgot to do it now, so let me go close my window so there's not more sports car drivers going on. Then we'll talk about this guy's design. So yeah, like I said, this guy sort of has some shadows under his eyes as it sort of seems, and he sort of has a really weird sort of smile from what looks like a very tooth smile at the end of the day, right? But as we'll come to learn later, this guy's name is Xavier, and we get that much later in the chapter, but just to make my life a whole lot easier, I'm just going to be calling him Xavier for now, right? Well, pretty much, Manabu just then replies like, oh yeah, like I couldn't even see that you were in an Earth Army uniform before, and Madeline's like, yeah, you really scared us, we were really just in a massive hurry, right? But Riko-tan sort of stays silent in this moment, and puts a hand in front of the other two, and just says like, hey, what is the deal with this school building? Why are there no other people in it besides for you? Explain this to us, please. Right? And Xavier sort of walks up and puts a hand on Riko-tan's helmet and says, ha ha ha, like, I mean, I understand it must be quite scary, but given that this school building is so run down, you did super well staying so vigilant, right? And Xavier sort of says like, hey, first of all, before I explain anything, I'll contact HQ and let them know that you've all been secured, and then I'll explain everything to the whole class after that. But first, let me open the shower rooms for you, right? As we then pretty much just see, we cut some time later as we see that Madeline is walking out of presumably these shower rooms with a towel around her hair, sort of like drying it all off, right? And Xavier just asks like, hey, did the hot water come out okay, right? And we see all of the girls are like, yeah, it definitely did, right? Xavier then just says like, hey, I put out canned emergency rations, you each can take as much as you like. And we see during this entire point, we see that Manabu has also gotten a shower, but he is looking at Xavier in a very skeptical way, right? As like, he's clearly acknowledging like, all right, I can see that this guy's part of the Earth Army, but just something doesn't seem to be lining up here, right? Well, eventually they cut to where everybody is finally sitting down to eat, and Xavier just says like, hey guys, I'll explain everything as we eat. First, for the introductory part, I'm Xavier. I've been tasked with watching over and managing this area, right? And he says like, hey, and this school building as well. This school building is definitely different from the one that you guys go to, right? This is a school building from 5 years ago, right? As everybody's like, oh, 5 years ago? Why would they need a school building that long ago if there weren't people here, right? But Xavier just says like, hey, your seniors studied here, right? And of course, being that this is like weird, like our seniors, Manabu just says like, hey, like our seniors? Like, what do you exactly mean by that? As Xavier just says like, hey, well, a lot of stuff went down a long time ago, so they had to stop midway, and that technically makes you second generation students. As we get a close-up on a lot of the faces of our main party here, as we sort of see Manabu, Riko-tan, and of course Madeline, and we also see that Aiden, and so let me quickly say, like, last time there was of course the head guy from the Medical Nation. I was calling him Hugh as just like a made-up name just to like give him something, but I was rereading chapter 19 of the series, like, because I also went ahead and made a reference card for what's it called, the series Navigatoria, just so, like, I can have all the information more in one place, not have to like stop and try to figure out names again. And of course, in chapter 19, going through this to write this reference card, I think he said that his name is Freind, Freind Vernell. I totally missed that thing on the top go through, but the head guy from the Medical Nation, his name is Freind at the end of the day. And we see that Freind is sort of taking care of Riko-tan in this second. But we also just get the faces of a few of the other members of Class D, as all of a sudden they're like, wait, second generation? We are second generation students, right? As Xavier just like starts to say like, oh, hey, you guys hear that? As we suddenly see there is a sort of bringing in the background, like bring, 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 almost like a telephone of some kind. As he's like, oh, well, it looks like all the people from HQ are here. I'll go and welcome all of them, right? As everybody in the class is sort of starting like to freak out, like, hey, did they just like say 5 years ago? Like, were they doing like the whole Navigatoria thing? Like, what does this really mean? Like, none of us knew that, like, and he just blurted it out like that, so it's not like it's a secret of anything, but like, why'd they stop halfway? Like, what the hell did he mean by that? As we start to see, like, a lot of intrigue is definitely coming from this moment and this reveal of, yeah, we don't really know what's going on here, right? But eventually Riko-tan just remembers back to the corner of the room when they were in earlier, where there were all of those blood stains. And Riko-tan just says, well, I have a hunch. As he just sort of starts to go in a little bit of a memory of his, he says like, hey, 5 years ago, my second brother, who was 19 at the time, died while studying abroad. He was always sitting alone and was really the weirdo of the Ri family. And maybe the story about him studying abroad was fake, and maybe he really came here. Very much implying that, alright, maybe if this is the second generation of the Navigatoria school and this whole idea of what the Earth Army is putting on here, maybe Riko-tan's brother was the original person that was sent from Dominos to come here and take care of this whole situation. And in the process of that, a sort of faction war broke out amongst everybody, in the end killing off Riko-tan's brother, which is just a really interesting aspect to pull from this. I really love this slight hint at a development of what could possibly be coming towards the future. Either way, Manabu then just says like, hey, well, that would first imply that all of the first term students died, and Riko-tan's like, well, here's the thing, we have no like specifics, so none of us can really make a good prediction as of right now, right? And as all of this happens, they start to hear a little bit of like a dud, 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 like a stomp, stomp in the background, as we see somebody is quickly running towards the entirety of Class D, right? And as they come around the corner, they just go, hello, oh my gosh, are all of you okay? Is everyone okay? As everybody gets a good look at them, like, wait a second, Admiral Andre Centeno? As they're like, why are you doing here? Didn't you die in that cave-in, right? As the Admiral is just like, oh, hey, I died, like, the one who actually died there was really just a clone of mine, so it was okay. And then he sort of like tags on the fact of like, oh yeah, and due to ethical issues, I could only make clones out of myself, right? Now this was the other ass pull I was sort of talking about. There are really two in this chapter. The first one is Xavier's introduction, or Xavier's introduction, as they pretty much just come out of almost nowhere, like, hey, this big creepy little monster thing, and then, oh no, you know what it actually turns out to be? It turns out to be that they were just a person from the Earth Army the entire time. And then this whole thing of like, Andre's just like, oh yeah, I am actually totally fine here, like, it was just a sort of mishap that I died in there, and it was a clone of mine, so yeah, yada yada yada. One of the girls in Class D is just like, just as I expect of you, Professor, right? But then Flayn, who I of course called Hugh last time, the medical nation student, and just says like, hey Admiral, we have a few injured people, please have the Earth Army doctors take a look at them. And Andre's like, yes, of course, I'll get right on that, right? As we just get a little bit of narration as all of this goes on, just like, hey, and so we were all recovered, and Class D appeared to be the last out of everybody, right? We then see that Manabu gets off of the bus where he is, and to get back to his normal dwellings and all of that. And we see the his pretty much advisor, his sort of helper from, of course, his home planet of Mukijino, or Mujinko, yeah. We of course see this is Kirin, and Kirin just like, hey Manabu, I'm glad you're safe. I took care of all of the animals while you were gone and away, right? And Manabu's just like, hey, thank you, Master Kirin, like, or Mr. Kirin. It really means a lot to me during all of this, right? And at this point, we do a little bit of a time skip forward, presumably a few days. We really don't know too much else about this whole situation, but we suddenly cut inside of the conference room where we see all of the class leaders are standing around together, right? Of course, we see the leader of Class D, Manabu, is of course standing here. And we also see the class leaders of both Class C and Class B are also here, of course being Christina and Joanne. Right, we see that Christine's just like, hey, so Class D was trapped in there for several days. That must have been a whole lot of trouble for you guys, right? And Manabu's just like, hey, it was, but hey, I'm just glad that you two weren't badly hurt. And like, hey, it's a miracle that everyone made it out with their lives, right? As we sort of get like a little funny thing in the margin of the chapter here, as we see there's just a small little image of Andre's clone, which of course got killed in the cave-in, right? But as all of this happens, Christina then just says like, hey, but that's whatever. Navi is the biggest concern for now. as Manabu's like, hey, what are you talking about, right? As it then perceives that Joanne and Christina explain the situation to Manabu, as Manabu is just like, wait, are you telling me that Navi is the one that really caused the cave-in there? As Joanne just pretty much explains, like, hey, the students of Class A were making a whole lot of noise, and Christina just says, like, hey, I heard that apparently it collapsed the moment Navi shouted, right? They didn't even know the cause yet, but they were all making assumptions, right? As Christina just says, like, hey, on the previous special assignment, and also the one before that, Class A's bullying is inexcusable, right? It is the very worst. And Joanne and Manabu are like, hey, what are you talking about? Navi is getting bullied? And Christina's like, are you too serious? Like, you two didn't even know this whole situation, right? As Manabu thinks back to whenever Navi went and was crying on his shoulder, and he's suddenly like, oh, yeah, wait a second. As we suddenly see a new voice enters the room where, of course, the conference room where the leader meeting is currently being held, right? As all of a sudden, we just see a voice say, yes, Class A is awful, and I honestly don't know what else to say. Nice to meet you, I'm Charlie. I will be Navi's substitute to participate in the leader meeting. And Manabu's like, Charlie, substitute, like, what happened to Navi? And we see that Charlie's design is a little bit interesting. Of course, he's got that typical headband that everybody has on their head, and he's got a few flowers in his hair, and he also seems to have a bandage over his nose. As Charlie just says, hey, right now, Navi can't attend school. As we get a look to Navi's room, of course, where she is staying, as we see that she is just sitting at the foot of her bed, curled up in a fetal position, and she's just crying a bunch, sort of head down in her arms, and that's really all we see from the scene, is that Navi doesn't look like she is particularly doing too well, right? At this point, it looks like the leader meeting has officially started, as we see, of course, Admiral, something Morel, I forget what his, Sasha Morel, if I'm not mistaken, but we see that Admiral Morel is here, of course, the leader of the leader meetings, as Morel just says, like, hey, they were on to study on their own until Class D was secured, so we will resume regular classes in a week's time. The cave exploration will be carried over to next month as well, right? As he says, now then, please relay that to all of your various classes, right? And Charlie then asks, like, hey, how should I end up telling Navi? And Morel just says, like, hey, she will hear it directly from me. We get a little bit of narration just saying, like, hey, the cave exploration was carried out again the following month, and the ranks were given out by class this time. As we see, we have pretty much jumped forward a massive amount of time, as we now cut to a scene where, again, Admiral Morel is sitting at the head of it, but instead of being the class leaders, it is just instead the class teachers, right? The various teachers of classes A through D, right? As we pretty much understand that S rank went to Class D, as we see that the teacher Gray Goodman of Class A just says, like, hey, since they were trapped in there for 5 whole days, I guess you could say they're more familiar with the caves, and all of their all of the reports during that time were very detailed and diverse, right? A rank goes to Class B. The students seem to be more motivated lately, and B rank goes to Class C, as the C class leader says, like, hey, my class didn't work together too well, did they, right? And then we understand that C rank goes to Class A, as we see the teachers just like, it was inevitable. Many of the students in Class A were injured when the cave collapsed, and our most excellent student couldn't participate. As presumably, yeah, Navi got pretty hurt during this whole time, but we see an image of another student maybe who may not be Navi. I'm not really quite 100% sure here, right? At this point, we then just hear this guy says, like, hey, and Navi will continue to be absent from school. And we pretty much see that Morel is sitting here, and on his lap is Admiral Andres, right? As the Class B teacher just says, like, hey, maybe we should intervene or do something like that. But Morel just says, like, no, if she stays wore down like this, then she won't be able to become a Navigatoria, will she? We then see that the meeting has been let out, and all of the class teachers are sort of walking away from the classroom, sort of just like genuinely just talking to each other, right? As we see the outside of the door, Manabu is actually standing here the whole time and heard a majority of the conversations that were going on in here, right? As we see that Manabu just like walks in a room completely passing all of the teachers, and we even see that his teacher, Gray Goodman, sort of just like looks at him and is a little surprised by this, but doesn't end up stomping him, right? As we pretty much see that the advisor to Morel, we've learned their name in the past, but I just don't remember at this point, and I do not have the Manga Plus Max subscription to go back and reread all of the chapters to learn all of this stuff, but whatever. Morel's assistant just is like, hey, what did you come in here for? Like, students are not permitted to enter here unauthorized, right? As Manabu's is like, hey, I know, but excuse me. Could you please tell me where Navi is? And that is where we end this chapter of Navigatoria. Like I said, a very interesting chapter through and through, and it definitely wraps up most of these plot threads pretty well, besides for the point of, all right, what is going on with Navi here, right? Like, we understand, like, all right, Xavier is introduced, an interesting character, to say the least. I mean, we don't really know too much about him, but mainly, we get this lore drop, all right. There was a they are the second generation students, and there was a generation previous to them who presumably all died out, but we do not know the full context of this yet. Of course, then, like, all right, now Charlie is a part of this team while Navi is away, and also that Admiral Andres is alive and fine that a clone of his died, right? And then really the interesting thing of, right, Navi cannot come to school right now. What is going on with this? And if she's absent from school, what is going to happen to her dream of winning the planet of the Mental for all of the Mentalians, right? It's just a very interesting little thing, all things considered. And the end of the chapter having, of course, Manabu come like, hey guys, tell me where Navi is, like, maybe I can do something about this. A really cool end to the chapter for sure. Yeah, I mean, I really don't have too much else to say about this chapter. Presumably next chapter, unless it's like a special chapter or something, we are going to see that our good old boy Manabu is going to be getting Navi's location and presumably going somewhere to rectify with her, or like talk for her and try to convince her to come back to school so she will not pretty much be like semi-expelled, right? But with that, thank you guys so very much for watching this video today on Navigatoria chapter number 21. I do plenty of other anime and manga related content on my channel, so if you like this, maybe you'll enjoy some of my other videos. Mainly I've only done one review on what's it called, Navigatoria right now, but there will be more coming in the future. But if you like this style of video, I also do a few other manga review series on the channel, mainly Kagurabachi, Oshinoko, and World Trigger. World Trigger reviews will be returning shortly. Like I said, I'm just very delayed right now. And also, Oshinoko has recently ended. Its final chapter has been published, and my video on it is out on the channel. So I've got about 60 Oshinoko chapter reviews you can go through and check out. So yeah, go check out all of those. And also, I am currently doing a weekly series on Kagurabachi, talking about the new chapters whenever it comes out, or at least trying to get back to that point where I can talk about it every single time a new chapter comes out, right? Like I said, that hurricane didn't do a whole lot good for my channel for sure, but yeah, thank you guys so very much for watching this. Like I said, I do my manga content on the channel, and if you did like this video, hopefully you mind leaving me a thought on some of your theories for Navigatoria down below. If you like the series that Waka Oshishi is writing, hey, I got it right that time. But yeah, I will see you guys next time for Navigatoria chapter number 22. Again, this was Navigatoria chapter number 21, titled The End of Exploration, or I'm sorry, End of Exploration. There's no "the" in there, but a very fitting chapter title, all things considered, being that that is sort of what it is. And yeah, I will catch you guys next time for Navigatoria chapter number 22. So again, this is chapter number 21. Thank you guys so very much for watching, and I will catch you guys next time. This will be Glowplasma 231, signing out.